Now it's time for Money with Murph.
So this Money with Murph is titled, Is AI a Bubble? So artificial intelligence is all the rage. With the hype initially created with the viral explosion of ChatGPT, it's all we hear about now and how it will change everyone's lives in the coming years. If you follow earnings reports from various companies, seemingly every management team's golden ticket to receiving an increase in their stock price is simply to talk about how they are utilizing AI, regardless of how good or bad the company's actual quarter was. It's led many people to think, are we in a bubble? Is there a mania regarding AI stocks? But does anyone ever truly know when we are within a bubble, regardless of what the topic is? Well, like many aspects of investing, history tends to be our best guide. We've seen plenty of bubbles and manias in the past decades, some larger than others. For example, the dot com bubble, the housing bubble, 3D printing stocks, cannabis companies, SPACs, and the metaverse, just to name a few. So let's take a look at some of the common characteristics that these past bubbles have had, and if we share any of those same common characteristics now with artificial intelligence. So, number one, rapid stock price increases. Looking at some various companies that are considered leaders in the artificial intelligence movement, this definitely would seem to be the case. Many have had extraordinary gains in very limited time.
We've seen huge gains in a number of companies tied to AI. And you hit it right on the head, Murph. I mean, it is the rage. People are talking about it. Companies are talking about it. I think um, uh, there's just no question. It's on everybody's mind, and CEOs have been using it to boost stock prices by talking about it. So, the question is are we in an AI bubble? Has the run up we've seen in some of these companies been too much? And when you're talking about common traits that you see, yeah, there's been a rapid stock price in a number of these companies, a number of these businesses. So I think you got to be a little bit careful. The thing to remember is sometimes that bubble, that mania, it can last a while, right? It can go on for quite a while. So you may be able to profit by some of that upside in some of these companies. And I think what could make sense is partnering solid fundamental investment analysis with companies that have exposure to AI. I mean, if you can find both of those, I think you're in a good place. I think it's dangerous to be buying just companies just focused on AI that don't have any other fundamentals behind that.
Totally agree, Scott. Number two common trait of bubbles, speculation rather than actual methodology. Many times, manias are created by what investors think may happen rather than what the actual presentation of steps that companies will take and the value that will be created from those steps.
It's a great point. I mean, I think you got to be careful about companies with AI in the name that are rallying, but there's no real fundamentals behind why that's the case. I think if they're some of the biggest companies on Wall Street that have rallied, some of the big FANG names have rallied for good reason because they have legit earnings, they have legit growth capabilities, and their price to earnings ratios may still seem reasonable. I think one of the things to remember about PE ratios is sometimes they can get really stretched with companies that have potential for growth. So, what you're looking for in companies like that are not the same PE ratios you're going to see in an energy stock or a dividend stock. That's not necessarily the metric that you're looking for. But I think what's different today than has been different in past bubbles is you can find companies that have AI exposure and have good fundamentals and good prospects to grow legit existing businesses.
Number three, Scott, media attention. Bubbles and manias need fuel for their fires, and one of the main sources of that fuel comes in the form of media. They know that the next hot topic will draw viewer attention, and in turn, it begins to create a self fulfilling prophecy. More investors are drawn to the topic, and because of the influx of attention, it incentivizes the media companies to continue to promote it.
I think one of the craziest things we see in media is the companies that CNBC and Fox Business choose to cover. They cover the ones that are sexy, that are going to get eyeballs, and not always the ones that are necessarily the best investment companies. If you look at some of the best companies over the past couple decades as far as growth, a well-known little pizza shop has way outperformed Amazon over the past 15 years. There's an energy drink company that's been the best performer over the past 2 decades relative to some of these tech firms. So definitely you have to be careful. I'm usually really cautious and pessimistic. Whenever the media gets a hold of something, usually it's too late. I do think the AI thing could have some further legs, though, but you have to be careful with how much the NASDAQ has run up. I mean, the NASDAQ's had a big year so far. We're still off of all-time highs for the NASDAQ, for the S&P, so there's still room for potential growth. But I think if you can mirror great companies with that have exposure to AI growth potential, that might be your best opportunity.
And our fourth and final common trait of bubbles is herd mentality. This is, in my opinion, the biggest one. This is the overarching 1,000-foot view of mania and bubbles. This is where FOMO comes in, a fear of missing out. Investors do not want to be the one that missed out on the next big thing. There's a lot of psychology when it comes to investing, and many people would experience more pain by being left behind than from the loss that the entire herd itself suffers.
Yeah, I think definitely FOMO is a real thing. We see it with people that bring us ideas all the time. Anytime there's been an investing mania, you've got people that are knocking on our door talking about how they want to get into it. And a lot of times you're too late to the party. What I would encourage you to think about is what are those best companies that are part of this mania? And if you see ups and downs in the market, is there a better entry point to get into some of those businesses? If they're great companies and great businesses with like some of those FANG stocks, you might not have an opportunity for a pullback. You might need to have a longer term view, but just know that what goes up quick can come down quick. And almost any one of these mania companies that I've seen over 20 years in this business, in this industry, you often have a better entry point. You think about the shift to non-meat products. You think about pot stocks. You think about crypto. A lot of times you get this mania, and then there's been a much better buying opportunity down the road. And so that may be the case here, and keep your eyes open for opportunities. Those great companies that you like, there may be other better entry points along the way.
Perfectly said. Yep. So only time will tell if we're in a bubble regarding artificial intelligence. If you're considering investing in companies that you believe will benefit from artificial intelligence, just do so with caution and understand that there is a huge amount of risk and likely a significant amount of volatility down the road.